We're continuing to go through a series of sermons talking about what it is to say that we have, or I have, or I want to understand a biblical worldview. And as we're going through it, I was thinking about this again. We're looking at our fifth part of this, and I want to remind you that what we're talking about. You know, as I've been going through this, you guys have been going, oh my gosh, these are great sermons, this is very helpful, this is very useful, and etc., etc. There's going to be stuff that you're going to write down today. But you have to understand, and I repeat again, that what we're talking about when we talk about a biblical worldview, out of all the people who say, I'm a Christian, we're not talking about people who are not Christians. Out of the people who are sitting in the churches this morning, out of the people who claim Christ, what we've been talking about, the series of sermons I've been going through, only 3% of people who claim to be Christians believe what I have been preaching. Okay? So you got to understand that the vast majority of people who claim Christ do not understand, agree, study, or would be what we're talking about. So again, it's very important to realize that whenever I'm talking about this, you need to study for yourself and you need to come to your own conclusions. But I believe this to be accurate. Now, we've talked about different things. What does it mean to have a biblical worldview? What is it the Bible teaches? Well, first thing we talk about is that the Bible teaches that salvation is a gift from God. It is not earned. It is not deserved. It is not something that I'm able to somehow acquire because I'm good enough, earn it, buy it, or whatever. Salvation is a gift from God. The second thing we looked at is that there are moral truths in the world. Just because there are 1,000 different answers that are all vying for our attention does not negate the fact that there is that there is moral truth, that there are answers to the tough questions out there, and we also identified and understood that there are moral truths and that the Bible defines those moral truths. That's a key as much as anything else to understand. We also looked at about how Jesus Christ has lived a sinless life. That he lived a sinless life, he gave a sinless death, so that sacrifice was perfect, so that we could have that hope of eternal salvation. Now, it again comes back to, it's one thing to say I believe in a higher power, or I believe in God, and then to say I believe in Jesus Christ who lived a sinless life, offered a perfect death, and died for my sins. Those are huge leaps apart. But identifying that I have a biblical worldview means that I believe or agree or hold to the truth that Jesus Christ lived a sinless life, offered a perfect death, and ushered in salvation for me. Now, some of the stuff we've been talking about have been more, I will say, on the theological side, more deeply theological. Today is more practicality. Today is more practical. Because the next thing we're going to talk about today is the understanding of a biblical worldview. That it is the Christian's responsibility. It is the Christian's responsibility. And by the way, as soon as I finish this sentence, I want you to please stay with me. Because as soon as I finish this sentence, you're going to be tempted to shut down on me. Okay? Because you've heard so many sermons about this. Alright? So, I want you to understand that as soon as I finish this sentence, I want you to stay with me, because everything I'll talk about is, while it ties together with other sermons I preach, is different than what you've heard in your lifetime. Okay? So, promise, stay with me. Promise. Cross your heart, stick a needle in Jason's eye, the whole thing. Yes? Not today, not now, later. So, the identification is, if I'm going to say I hold a biblical worldview, not like Jesus Christ lived a sinless life, salvation is a gift, etc., etc., but that it is the Christian's responsibility to share their faith. Now stay with me. That it is the Christian's responsibility to share their faith. In Matthew chapter 28, we have what is known as the Great Commission, verses 18, 19, and 20. And verse 19 says, Jesus says, go make disciples of all nations. That verse has been used in sermons for millennia. So what does that mean? Well, it means different things. And I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago. I realized a few months ago, and then I forgot about it, and I was thinking about it a couple of weeks ago, that next year I will complete and be given my master's degree in the same year that I will celebrate 25 years in the ministry. I can't believe that I'm old enough to have been in the ministry 25 stinking years. That scares the bejeebers out of me. But I see a therapist, I'm getting better. It's okay. That said, whenever I started out in the ministry, there were the phrases of going calling, the church needs to be evangelistic, you need to witness to your friends, etc., etc. Those were big phrases. Going calling, being evangelistic, witnessing to your friends, etc., etc. The little country church I grew up in was running about 60 people before I was born. Ran about 60 people the duration of when I lived there. Running 60 people now. If Jesus Christ delays and comes back 2,000 years, in 2,000 years that church will be sitting there running 60 people. Quite possibly the same 60 people. That's a whole other story. The only one of that church, and there were great fights about this, the only one of that church that really wanted to see us be evangelistic and really wanted to see you go out and do stuff was my father. The rest of them said, ain't no stinking way. Church is here, they know we're here. If they want to come worship, they can come worship. If they don't want to, we ain't going to make them. I went to Bible college, and I remember in the town where the Bible college was at, in the local Christian church, they had what was called a calling night, and I think it was, if I remember right, it was Tuesday evenings. And what they would do, and I remember going out with my professors, because some of my professors, it was great, they were going, you know what, we may be Bible college professors, but we're also members of the church, and if we don't do our part to at least, tell people about Christ, what are we doing here? So I remember nights going out with some of my Bible college professors. And what they would do, and understand, it wasn't cold calling. It wasn't like we would go out and okay, here's an apartment building, go start knocking on doors. The idea was that if the trade-offs came to church on Sunday, that Tuesday night, we would go to their house and say, thanks for coming. Appreciate you being here. Or if somebody had not been coming to church for a few weeks, I'd be like, okay, so we haven't seen Jason in church in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So we need to go see what's going on with him. So we would go to his house to see what's going on, if he's doing okay, or problems, or whatever else. And it was fine. And then they actually, my professor gave this to me, and I used it for years in the ministry. There's a little half sheet of thing where you could, you say, some caring folks from blah, blah, blah church came by to visit you, and there's this open space where you could write a hand note and stick it in the door so they knew you were there, and if they weren't there, etc., etc. I don't think I could get away with that now. I remember in former ministries, I would go out to see people on Monday night. And quite often there were people, in the church going, man, I'm growing, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do, and I don't know how to do it, and can you help me, and what is it that you can do to help me grow? And I say, okay, well, I'll pick you up Monday night. You can go with me. Don't have to say a word, just go with me. And so I would go to different people's homes. Hey, Tony and Stacy Pavis been coming to church for a while, just going to stop by and say hi to them and see how things are going and make sure things are going good. Hey, we're going to stop by Chad and Julie's, just say hi and see what's going on. Hey, we're going to go by the trade-offs again because, they're sinners going straight to hell. We need to stop by as often as we can. That kind of stuff. And so we would, it was one of those things, it wasn't announced. I didn't call ahead of time. I just kind of, I would, on a Sunday morning, I would assess who was there, who wasn't there, make a list in my mind of where I needed to go Monday night.